This was a horrible, horrible tragedy.
Chopper 11 was back over the Pittsburgh Zoo one day after a little boy died there. We found crews working around the African painted dogs exhibit where the 2-year-old was killed. We've been following this story since it happened yesterday, and there are several new developments tonight. David?
Yeah, Peggy, I know you feel it as a parent. We all do. Just a horrific story. Maddox Durkosh is the little boy's name, just 2 years old. He was at the zoo with his mother. She lifted him up onto the railing when he fell down into the exhibit and then was mauled by those dogs. Here's what we learned new tonight on this. The zoo is starting its internal investigation. Right now, officials meeting to determine who will be on that panel. All the dogs that are part of that exhibit are quarantined and will remain so for 30 days. The zoo will reopen to the public tomorrow. We have live Team 11 coverage tonight, starting with Channel 11's Renee Kaminsky. The full story that's coming out today. Renee.
Dave, I'm live outside management offices tonight at the Pittsburgh Zoo, where I'm told phones have been ringing off the hook all day. People from all over the world calling to offer their condolences. People have also been dropping off teddy bears. Now, zoo officials have had an entire day to piece together the chain of events, which began when this mom was just trying to give her little boy a better view and ended in horror.
It's the worst nightmare as a zoo professional.
Struggling to keep her composure, the CEO of the Pittsburgh Zoo gave us a clearer picture of Sunday's tragedy, the first fatal mauling in the zoo's 114-year history.
It happened literally in seconds. It was very, very quick. There was very little anybody could do.
Dr. Barbara Baker said safety netting under the overlook should have caught the 2-year-old child before he fell 11.5 feet into the pit of dangerous African wild dogs. Here's what happened instead.
From witnesses' accounts, the child was so small that he bounced, and he bounced twice, and then he bounced into the exhibit.
As a Pittsburgh police commander took notes, zoo officials said staff were there in seconds, but it was just too dangerous to go in. They fired dummy tranquilizer darts at the marauding pack. All but one of the dogs were scared off. The one that wouldn't let go was shot and killed by police. After the briefing, we rode to the wild dogs enclosure. It is closed to the public now, and all the dogs are in quarantine. But we did get a look at the gazebo-type overlook, the safety netting underneath, and the type railing from which the toddler fell.
What we understand from the medical examiner's report is the child did not die from the fall, that the child was mauled by the dogs.
I've been talking with police and found out that investigators will be looking closely at that exhibit, at its structure and maintenance. They're also looking at the history of those dogs as they've interacted with the public, and they have not ruled out criminal charges. So what is next for this endangered species? Well, that's part of what I'm working on, new at 6. Reporting live outside the Pittsburgh Zoo tonight, I'm Renee Kaminsky, Channel 11 News.
Okay, Renee, thank you very much. Now, Chopper 11 gives us another view of the exhibit right here. We've highlighted where the net is for you. It could catch, or is supposed to catch, anyone who might fall, but the boy was so small and so lightweight, he simply rolled off and onto the ground below, where the dogs then attacked. Peggy?
Family members of this little boy tell us, as you can imagine, they're just not ready to talk publicly yet, but friends and neighbors are just heartbroken. Channel 11's Kara Sapaida is live after talking to family and friends tonight. Kara?
Peggy, the family members, the parents of little Maddox were surrounded by friends and family today. They have family members who live just a few doors down and others who drove through the night to be there for them today. The ones that we talked to briefly were in shock, mourning this horrible tragedy. Neighbors that we talked to said police actually went door to door early this morning, letting them know about this great loss.
The hardest part is going to be to explain to my kids that their playmate is no longer here.
People around the world are reacting to the news that a 2-year-old boy died after a trip to the Pittsburgh Zoo turned into a nightmare. But parents on this quiet Whitehall street woke to the news that it was their little neighbor.
Cute little guy, light hair, he had red glasses, and every time that he was out in the backyard or the front yard, my little boy would always say, "There's Maddox." You know, he'd always get so excited.
Rachel Macher lives right next door to Elizabeth and Jason Durkosh and their 2-year-old son Maddox. She told us they did everything with their little boy. He was their only child.
Oh, wonderful. You know, they went nowhere without Maddox.
Sunday afternoon, Mom and young Maddox were at the Pittsburgh Zoo when he fell more than 12 feet into the African painted dogs exhibit. Police say the boy was mauled to death within minutes.
And as a mom myself, what tragedy that would be. You know, your heart stops when your kid skins their knee. I couldn't imagine what she's going through.
Rachel says she saw the parents taking a walk together this morning, glad they have each other to lean on.
I just hope that our community, our very close community, can come together and support the family through this.
Neighbors say that Maddox was an extremely happy 2-year-old, always zooming around on his little John Green tractor, and most recently, so excited to be a superhero for Halloween. Reporting live, Kara Sapida, Channel 11 News.
Pittsburgh Mayor Luke Ravenstahl released a statement about the zoo tragedy. He said this tragic incident has shocked and devastated the entire community. We must focus now on sending our prayers and support to the victim's family and to all involved with this tragic incident as officials continue their investigation.
Now, we talked with a local veterinarian about those African painted dogs and their behavior. He says the alpha male, the alpha dog, likely was the lead attacker, and the other dogs who are territorial followed.
They're protecting, and they're the ones that feel they're in control of that territory. So they can be extremely aggressive. And to us, it's not rational, but they're not rational. They're wild animals.
Dr. Mike Hutchinson says if an adult had jumped in to try to rescue the boy, the adult likely would have been attacked as well.
Target 11's Rick Earl has been combing through inspection reports for the zoo. He joins us live to tell us what he was able to learn today. Rick?
Well, Peggy, I discovered that the U.S. Department of Agriculture inspected the zoo in September, and one of the areas they looked at was that African painted dogs exhibit. Now, that inspection report found no violations in the painted dog exhibit. The only violation at the zoo, cockroaches in the primate building. I've also learned tonight that USDA rules require sufficient distance and/or barriers between the animal and the general public to assure the safety of animals and the public. And a USDA inspector right now is headed to the Pittsburgh Zoo to see if anything at that facility may have contributed to this tragic death. But as far as specific requirements for enclosures at the dogs exhibit, the USDA says there's nothing set in stone.
There's not going to be a page I can turn to where I can share with you, okay, here's for painted, African painted dog enclosures, it has to be X, Y, and Z. But certainly they passed their pre-license inspection. They have not been cited for anything. Certainly this last inspection shows that painted dog exhibit was part of that inspection, and there was no non-compliant items.
Now, the USDA isn't the only agency that inspects zoos. The Association of Zoos and Aquariums just reaccredited the Pittsburgh Zoo in September. Now, we asked for those accreditation reports, but the zoo would not release them. Reporting live in the newsroom, Rick Earl, Channel 11 News.
As a mom myself, what tragedy that would be. Your heart stops when your kid skins their knee.
Indeed, such an unthinkable tragedy for anyone. Our team coverage of the deadly accident that killed a child at the Pittsburgh Zoo continues now at 5:30. Let's get over to David Johnson with the latest. David?
Yeah, this is just so horrific, Peggy. The zoo working right now to put together an investigative team on this. This will include people who were not at the zoo at the time of the accident, people who don't work for the organization, by the way. The zoo will reopen tomorrow, but the painted dogs exhibit will stay closed indefinitely. Once that investigative unit is formed, it'll send a formal report to the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And this is the area it will be focused on, right here. This is where the 2-year-old actually fell. And Channel 11's Alan Jennings covering this for us and handling that part of it. He's live now after talking and taking a good look at that exhibit. Alan?
There is a safety netting about 3 feet below the railing, David, on this exhibit overlooking the African painted dogs. But this netting was designed to stop cups and cameras and popcorn boxes from falling under the ground, onto the dogs. It was not designed to stop a child.
From witnesses' accounts, the child was so small that he bounced, and he bounced twice, and then he bounced into the exhibit.
He bounced from this netting designed to stop cups and cameras, not human beings. The attack was instant from a pack of African painted dogs. Experts called them endangered but incredibly aggressive. The 2-year-old didn't die from the fall but was mauled to death. At a news conference earlier today, an emotional CEO braved an onslaught of questions about exhibit safety.
I know this is emotional for you as well too, but the public wants to hear from you about this issue. Do you take responsibility for not creating a fail-proof exhibit here?
Life is full of risk. There's no fail-proof part of risk in life. We do everything we possibly can, and we evaluate it every single day.
Baker didn't answer the question, instead explained why all exhibit railings are slanted away from the animals. It was a railing similar to this one.
Are designed to try to avoid having children placed on the railings. So all of the railings are at a 45-degree angle. If the child should fall, that child would fall hopefully backwards and not forward.
Now, it is still unclear who or what was responsible for this tragic accident. What we do know for sure, the feds are investigating, the Pittsburgh police are investigating, and the Pittsburgh Police Homicide Unit, and they promised to wrap up their investigation quickly. Live at the Pittsburgh Zoo, Alan Jennings, Channel 11 News.
Hey, Alan, thank you very much. And of course, the story getting the attention of families around the world. One of America's most well-known animal experts is talking about it, too. We asked Jack Hanna today about this incredibly unusual and terrible accident.
What happens at NASCAR when a car flies over the wall? And it happens every once in a while. It's a tragedy, but that's those things, and not just there, all sorts of things we all do as human beings throughout this country. The visitation to zoos today still is proven to be one of the safest places in the entire world to take your family, and it still will be. This is a freak accident.
Hanna went on to say the Pittsburgh Zoo is one of the safest in the country, and this is beyond anything you can comprehend in the business. Peggy?
We rushed our crews to the zoo yesterday afternoon just as soon as we learned about the accident, and we were able to find some witnesses who saw and heard unforgettable things.
Screams happened first, and then a short time after that, we heard the personnel coming up telling us to evacuate. We went into the building, then we heard the gunshots.
Certainly a lot of emotion tied to this story. This is the first time a visitor has ever been killed at the Pittsburgh Zoo.
Our coverage of this major local story continues online right now at WPXI.com, where you can see Dr. Barbara Baker's full press conference and raw video from Chopper 11. We have Team 11 coverage. It begins with our Renee Kaminsky. What will happen when the zoo reopens tomorrow? Renee?
David, every staffer, every employee I saw at the zoo here today has been crying for the last 24 hours over this tragedy, which we know a lot more about tonight, including what's going to happen to those wild African dogs. For the first time since the tragedy, though, we got a closer look at the exhibit as well as that mesh safety netting underneath, which failed to catch the victim, this little boy, when he slipped from his mother's grasp on that upper railing. Now, zoo officials tonight say the child was just so small he bounced out of that netting and fell down below about 11 feet 4 inches into that waiting pack of these wild dogs, which they just kill on instinct. Now, a code red emergency was called, but the zoo says that it was just too dangerous for staff to enter the enclosure, so they fired dummy tranquilizer darts, but that didn't work. I'm told it was all over in a matter of seconds.
So staff immediately went into response and immediately acted appropriately. Unfortunately, there's just simply, once the child was in the exhibit, there was simply nothing anybody could have done, and it was over very quickly.
Tonight, all those dogs are in quarantine. I'm told they will not be euthanized, but that exhibit is closed for the rest of the winter. Meantime, tonight, zoo officials say they are reevaluating each and every safety precaution at each and every exhibit here at the Pittsburgh Zoo. Reporting live tonight, I'm Renee Kaminsky, Channel 11 News.
Channel 11's Kara Sapida has had the difficult task of learning more about this heartbroken family. She found a family friend who has a message to anyone questioning the mother's actions. Kara?
Peggy, it's hard to even imagine what this family is going through tonight. I know that the parents of little Maddox are surrounded by family members, some who drove through the night to be there with them today. The family members I spoke to briefly were still shocked, they said. Neighbors said that this morning police went around letting them all know about this great loss.
His life will be celebrated more than a child to be mourned.
Neighbors got the devastating news today as people around the world heard about the little boy who died after a trip to the Pittsburgh Zoo. To the children who live on this Whitehall street, that boy was their little friend.
The hardest part is going to be to explain to my kids that their playmate is no longer here.
Rachel Macher lives right next door to Elizabeth and Jason Durkosh and their 2-year-old son, Maddox. She told us they did everything with their little boy. He was their only child.
Oh, wonderful. You know, they went nowhere without Maddox.
Sunday afternoon, Mom and young Maddox were at the Pittsburgh Zoo when he fell more than 12 feet into the African painted dogs exhibit. Police say the boy was mauled to death within minutes. Officials today said more like seconds, while his mother screamed for help.
You know, I can't imagine as a mom myself what tragedy that would be. You know, your heart stops when your kid skins their knee. I couldn't imagine what she's going through.
Rachel saw the parents taking a walk together this morning, glad they have each other to lean on.
I just hope that our community, our very close community, can come together and support the family through this.
Neighbors say that Maddox was such a happy 2-year-old, always zooming around on his little John Green tractor, and most recently was so excited, told them all how happy he was to be a superhero for Halloween. Reporting live, Kara Sapida, Channel 11 News.
More details now. This exhibit was first built in 1992, but it was not home to the painted dogs until they arrived in 2006. There is no record of a painted dog ever attacking a human in the wild, but they are known to attack livestock with such ruthlessness that they're nicknamed the Devil's Dog. And they have a bite force stronger than any other predator, including lions, tigers, and bears. We talked to a local expert who says it's all part of the pack mentality.
But when that alpha dog does something, they're territorial. If it attacks something, the rest of the dogs want to emulate that leader, so they attack as well.
All right, the exhibit passed safety inspections. It was designed with safety in mind. Now, here you see the safety net that actually caught the child. All right, let's take a closer look at that right there. That's the one that he bounced right off of. The railing on the deck was designed to save lives. If someone climbs onto it, it's tilted, so you're supposed to fall back, not forward. And tonight we're learning about the codes the zoo uses to call out an emergency. Code green, an animal emergency. Code blue is an incident involving people. And code red means there's a severe risk to people's lives, which of course was the case yesterday. And our coverage of this big story extends to the web. Go to WPXI.com. You'll find entire news conference from the zoo, Dr. Baker, plus all of our raw video from Chopper 11. You can go back and take a closer look there as well.